How many of you know how to ride a bicycle? I'm going to engage people right away. And I'm going to ask your audience, same thing. Do you know how to ride a bicycle? Well, of course. Yeah. If they're an adult, or anything get over six, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, well, do you think you'll ever forget how? No, once you learn that skill, you don't ever forget it.
Welcome to Creativity with Purpose, where we explore the stories, struggles, and sparks that shape our creative lives. I'm your host, Ann Maracek, author, healer, and believer in the power of meaningful expression. Together, we'll dive deep into what it means to create with heart, live with intention, and heal through the beauty of storytelling.
I'm Ann Maracek, and this is Creativity with Purpose. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Pete Andersen, PhD. Dr. Pete Andersen is a top performer. He is a behaviorist, author, speaker, and publisher, helping people improve their quality of life and performance with principles of intrinsic motivation. He is the owner of Triad Publishing, focusing on nonfiction works. He has studied what top performers have in common for over 50 years. The emphasis of his PhD studies has been on behavioral, educational, personality, and sports psychology. He's a retired school superintendent with experience in coaching and business. In master swimming competition, he holds world and national records for his age group and has won 31 Senior Olympic National Championship gold medals. His book, The 3 Secret Skills of Top Performers, Powerful Lessons in Transformational Leadership, is an Amazon bestseller. And his brand, Teach Yourself to Swim, with its book and 4 DVD curriculum, has been sold in over 7 countries. He presents transformational leadership strategies to improve performance in less time and is currently marketing a 7-module leadership training program to Fortune 1000 companies. You have been busy, my friend. It's
Yes.
good to see you, Pete.
Yeah, I've always had the attitude, to keep myself grounded, is that and even back when I was starting to mow lawns when I was 11, 12 years old to learn a work ethic, I always had the attitude that I was just an average guy trying to do a better than average job. And I don't care if it's washing dishes, mowing a lawn, or writing or doing anything. So here I've become a swimmer, wanted to be a coach, became an All-American at Indiana University. Later on, Mark Spitz came in after I finished my bachelor's and master's. But I had a great coach. I've had great mentors over the years, and they've guided me and helped given me the principles that I can talk about today.
Yes, absolutely. And what everybody wants to know, the 3 secrets.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, the way that came about was I had written a book called Purposeful Intent, Motivating Your Mind from Within. And because I was an educator, I wrote it like a textbook. And that was a huge mistake because my whole goal was to teach people how to be self-motivated.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
because most people think of motivation as something that, well, they see someone telling somebody else what to do, like a boss or a coach, even in a pep talk in a locker room, and or being directed to them. I want you to do this. It's an order, like even when you talk to
Right.
your
In
kids,
other
say,
words, something from external coming
yeah,
at you. Right.
yeah, it's like when you talk to your kids, hey, pick up the dog poop or whatever, and it's an order, and
Right.
that's your chore. And but I thought about it that when people do that, that's an extrinsic motive because it's not as meaningful and relevant to the person receiving the order. And then so people don't realize or think that how can I motivate myself? They always think it's something that's doing to somebody else and not me. And
Mhm.
so I came up with the idea that how can I teach people to be self-motivated?
Yeah.
So I had the book half written, made a huge mistake. I had 400 variables pared down to 14, and I thought if I can teach you these, you're self-motivated and you're good. You're good to go for whatever you want to do in life. Unfortunately, you can't write about the interaction effects like variable 6 with 8, 9 with 12 to come up to your criterion. I'm self-motivated. So I realized my mistake, and well, I don't know if you're biblical or not, but Job in the Bible cussed out God, and I didn't mince words either. I was really ticked off, man. I'm sat there. I finally got so ticked off at because I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but at the same time I realized it's a huge mistake. And so I said my words. I made 3 stacks of papers and I shut down my computer and I'm through with this blankety blank thing, and blankety blank, And then after I got that off my chest, I sat in the chair and I cried. I literally cried for 20 minutes. And even today, when I think about it, sometimes I get tears in my eyes because it meant so much to me.
Sure.
Um, why couldn't we come up with 3 simple skills? I mean, God, come on. They gave us so many uh, uh, stories in the Bible, how these wonderful miracles happened. And I think how can this be so hard? I just need a little help. I didn't think of it as a prayer, but I simply sat back and I cried. And then, well, and my personal story was 23 years earlier, I'd been twice divorced. I had 5 boys,
Oh,
including triplets in my first marriage, 3 months into my PhD program.
oh my gosh.
And I thought I went and talked to my mother, and the mothers are the stabilizing influences in our lives. I mean, you moms that are listening, I hope you realize that you have a great influence on your children, greater than you might realize. And I said, Mom, who's going to want to date me? I may as well put a big L on my forehead for loser. And she said, No, wait a minute. You have a PhD, you have a good paying job, and you're a family man. You come home to your wife and that sort of thing. And that's what they want to know. And so my wife chose to date me. And then we got married. That was 40 years ago now. Been together 41 years.
So this one took.
Yeah, I got it right through prayer. So anyway, she said, go in the bedroom, pray alone like I taught you. And well, I did that. And 18 days later, Mom said, be prepared to wait a year. Keep your eyes and ears open, right? More of an antenna like a butterfly. And well, I met my wife 18 days later. Didn't take a year. All right, now segue forward now, or 23 years later now, I'm writing this book and I made a mistake. I didn't think of it as a prayer. I didn't go to the bedroom, pray alone, like my mother had told me to do. And 11 hours later, it wasn't 18 days, it wasn't a year. 11 hours later, that was 4:30 in the afternoon. At 3:30 in the morning, I woke up and I wrote in a trigger pad. And maybe you people have some of that. I don't know. Some of your people should do it anyway. Have a trigger pad next to you so that when you wake up in your dream sleep, just write a word or two down and recall it. Then
Right,
publish it the next morning.
right.
I had a habit of doing that. Well, I was writing not just words, I was writing whole sentences and then pages. And then I realized I'm waking up. I'm getting my answer now. So
Yeah,
I got the
yeah.
pages out of the printer and I wrote what I call the Triad Performance Improvement System. And it's based on the common practices of top performers that I've observed for over 55 years. So we'll get
Yeah.
into that now, and I'll be able to talk more about that. But that's how it came to me through. So if some of you people your people in your audience just don't understand the power of prayer, well, I can't help you with that. But I'm a believer, and so don't kill me. I'm just a messenger.
It's amazing. You know, as soon as you said 3 a.m., I perked up. I wrote a healing journal for myself.
Oh
When
yeah.
my parents transitioned out of their home of 54 years into assisted living. And being an only child, it was the task was thrust upon me to help them empty their home and get it ready for resale. Well, in the process of doing that, I saw items from my childhood literally coming out of their attic, right? And it
Oh,
was triggering all of these childhood memories and traumas that had been long forgotten and suppressed.
yeah.
And I wrote myself a healing journal and I wrote all of these memories down. And then I put it in the file cabinet for 8 years.
Oh man.
I had no intention of ever making any of this personal healing journey public. It was for me, right? And it had served its purpose. And I closed the journal and I put it in the file cabinet. Well, in the interim, my father passed away. And my mother and I, because of the transformational journey I was on in writing my healing and my childhood memories, my mother and I finally found a place to become friends. We found some commonality. And so our relationship improved dramatically during that time as well. And then at 3 a.m. one night, I
Oh
was
boy.
awoken as if I'd been shook. And I
Yeah,
heard plain as day, the title of your book is Unpacking the Attic.
perfect.
Like, thank you. What? I had never thought of this thing in the file cabinet for 8 years as a book, right? And
Right.
then I heard it's time you need to share. And then
Perfect.
next morning I woke up and there is in my inbox Steve Harrison Editing and Publishing Company. And my husband's like, it's a sign you have to call.
Yeah.
And so I did. I called. I talked to Joe. I know you know him. He's fantastic. And
Yeah.
he said, well, read me the introduction in the first two chapters, which I did. There's this long pause, and I'm thinking, oh, Lord, he hates it, right? He says, I'm crying. You've touched something really deep within me. This is transformational, and you have to share. And so, in a similar experience to what you had, I was awoken to what by who I consider to be my spirit guides, my angels, right? With this message, with this knowledge, and you had that similar experience, and I find that fascinating.
Yeah. Well, my mother used to call this the universal mind, and you have to tap into it, and you have to
Yes,
be a
I
believer.
agree. I
And
totally agree.
and well, the old phrase, "Lord works in mysterious ways." And I think now I'm also a subscriber of the messenger theory. Some people don't believe me. I've talked to some good friends of mine who are pastors in churches and stuff,
Uh-huh.
and even when I did talks to teachers when I was a school superintendent, I brought out this little tiny megaphone like you'd have at a football game, always a little one to get their attention. And then I did a parody of George Carlin, and of course now he turned his life around and quite a bit. He started advocating for tiny town station children's stuff, and but I did a parody of him, and I said I brought out my megaphone. This is God speaking, and but I mean, how are we supposed to? How is God supposed to get the messages across to us if it's not through us,
Yeah,
as people talking to friends of ours? But the sad part is, people get the message. It's some subconscious problem they've been, like you just said, you had you put it in a file cabinet for 8 years,
I did.
and it was subconsciously in your brain. You had this idea of a mindset, but you suppressed it. And
I
people
did.
do that all the time. They have this deep-seated subconscious problem. They want to just keep it down in the file cabinet, if you will.
Mhm.
And but then a word comes out, like you just had a revelation with you, or I did, and or maybe a complete stranger that all of a sudden says something that's the answer to your question. It's the answer to your problem.
Yeah,
And you realize though that 95% of the time people say, oh, I don't know you. I don't trust you. My dog taught me messages. My dog taught me messages. But people blow by the messenger, and that's what's sad. I mean, 95% of the time, people just, no, I don't want to believe that. And so they keep the messages in the file cabinet and deep in their brain, and it's sad.
yeah. And you know, the universe can send messages through animals, like you said.
Yes. Yeah.
They're little spirits, right?
Yeah.
Um, through experience, you might see all of a sudden the same number appearing everywhere you look. Things like that.
Yeah.
I for me, I see the number 13 constantly. It makes me giggle.
Yeah.
I'll be out all day working and walk in the kitchen and look at the clock and it's something 13. And I just laugh. I wake up in the morning and it's 6:13. It's just always there. I get a giggle every time. And it's kind of like a little game my spirit plays with me, that I'm always seeing this number, and it's got its own significance too. It's an angel number, but it makes me feel like
Yeah.
I have that connection to source, right?
Yes, and that's what it's all about too. And that's the same thing with engaging people and connecting with people. That was the whole purpose of writing this book, to get people to understand that you have the ability to be a top performer. And it's the same thing. You model the top performers, and then it shortens your learning curve. I'd ask people when I did talks to teachers, can I see a show of hands? Who doesn't want to shorten their learning curve? Never a hand goes up.
Sure, of course.
But another thing I would do too is I would start up in the back of the room, and Perry Belcher talks about this. It's called pattern interrupt. And people had introduced me, well, where is he? He's not at the stage. No, I'm standing on a good, not a fold-up chair, but a good chair in the back of the room where they crane their neck around. And then as I'm walking up to the stage, I'd say, how many of you know how to ride a bicycle? I'm going to engage people right away. And I'm going to ask your audience, same thing. Do you know how to ride a bicycle? Well, of course. Yeah. If they're an adult, we're ready to get over six, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, well, do you think you'll ever forget how? No, once you learn that skill, you don't ever forget it. It's the same thing with learning to drive a car. You follow the rules of the road. You can drive small trucks. Of course, there's some people today can't drive a stick shift, you know, and I
Yeah.
learned on a stick shift when I was a kid. Maybe everybody should do that, but they don't make those cars anymore. It seems
Yeah.
like they're automatic shifts now. And so I went from that to another engagement. I said, all right, everybody get out a coin. And the funny part was, I'm teaching to the Chicago Public School Teachers Association, and like 300 teachers in the room in Chicago. And I had a couple, I don't have a coin. You're a teacher. Can you solve that problem? Can you borrow one from somebody else? You know? And I'm thinking, oh, well, okay. So that's my audience. Anyway, so I said, people get out a coin. Well, of course, you know what happens. Everybody flips a coin and they look at it. I said, how many people have heads? How many people have tails? And of course, it's pretty much equal in the room. And so I said, do you want to go through life just flipping a coin? Hey, I might get lucky today. I might find my answer. I might get lucky. It might happen today. Today's the day. And I flip a coin. Um, or would you rather learn a system, the triad performance improvement system, that would almost guarantee, not, you can't guarantee 100%
Sure.
effectiveness every time, but I will guarantee you that 95 to, well, maybe 90 to 95%, let's make it a little bit broader, you'll learn something from what you learned today. You'll learn something from it. And so the triad teaches you that. And that's what these three secret skills do for that are common to top performers. And we want to model them. Why don't we shorten our learning curve? Let's learn what they've done.
So you got to tell me what's secret number one.
Okay. All right. I guess we've kept everybody in suspense long enough.
Right, right.
All right. Okay. The first one is increase awareness. Um, just think about it. A butterfly wouldn't survive without antenna. And you've got to take in more information. A top performer takes in a lot more information. I would tell that to kids in high school. Instead of worrying about being liked on TikTok by your friends, why don't you think about your future and then pay attention in class and bring in more information? Um, there's a teacher up there and they talk and you take notes, but somehow that information has to get in your brain somewhere and you have to make it meaningful and relevant. So what I would ask kids, who makes that information meaningful and relevant? Same thing for your audience. You do. All right. But it's based on your prior experience as well. And you can associate and do things like that. But the bottom line is it's your responsibility to become educated and to learn from whatever you're absorbing.
Yes.
And then, of course, if it's not important, we don't tend to retain it. All right. So increase awareness is really important. There's probably 1,001 different ways that I could teach you how to increase awareness. And for example, what did you eat for dinner last night?
Mhm.
That's a short-term memory. But a lot of people can't tell you that. They have to
Uh-huh.
think about it. But
Yeah.
that's all part of it. So you have to increase awareness. You have to bring in more information, and then you make it meaningful and relevant, and then you store it. Now we seem to think that if it's a visual pattern, you're going to store it in the occipital lobe in the back of your brain. Other types of parts of the brain. Now the frontal lobe also is really important. That's where you do your thinking.
Mhm.
But the most important part is the prefrontal cortex. It sits like a little blob of silly putty in front of your frontal lobe. It's like the switching yard in a freight yard. Oh, wait, that's a visual pattern. Let's put it here. Or that's a balance problem. Let's put it here. And it does it, and it puts us to associate with other like things. That's why Einstein was so intelligent. He did what we call motor, or well, sensory motor learning, essentially what it is. He would visualize or think of something in some other sense modality. So if he forgot it in one modality, he could associate it to another one. And so that's why he had so many associational neurons. And they proved that when they absconded with his brain,
Yeah, that was
unfortunately.
kind of bizarre, but yes, they did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, so that's the first one, increase awareness.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
And that is self-awareness as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I see that as both awareness of what messages is the universe sending me, what information do I need to reach the goal that I have in mind. And
Yes.
also you have to know where to seek that information, right? You have to find those mentors. You have to reach out and avail yourself of the opportunities that are all around us, even if it's buying a book, right? And going through the
Yeah.
pages and highlighting and processing and applying
Yeah.
these things. But it's not just an awareness of, your surroundings, but of what you need to focus on and where you need to focus intent so that your goal becomes closer on a daily basis.
They call that clarity of purpose, which is what you're talking about,
Yes,
creativity with purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, then you're going to be all over the board. You don't know where you're
right.
going. It's like trying to go to grandma's house without a road map, you know.
Yes, exactly. Just think how much more powerful light is when we focus it, it becomes a laser.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, same thing. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So, we are energy.
Yeah.
We are beings of molecules that are moving. We are not static things. We are energized, right? And
Yeah.
so we take all that light within us and we focus it toward a
Yeah.
goal.
And I want to add something else to what you're saying too. I would tell my kids, because as you know now, I have two ex-wives and I've been married 40 years now. And one of the things over the years I've learned is that um, it's when you hug somebody, give them a good strong hug, like a bear hug. Like I love my kids and I'd hug them. And of course, Father's Day was great. I got hugs
Yeah,
from my
I
kids
bet.
over here. And one kid, he's like, man, he's like a sequoia tree. He's just big and tall and strong. And I swear he's like a middle linebacker. He's like hugging a sequoia tree. But I would tell my kids, I said, when you hug your partner or your spouse or whatever, or even your kids, when you hug somebody and you don't feel any vibes coming back, you don't wait for the sun to set. You've got a problem,
Yeah,
because they're not hugging you back. You don't sense any vibes coming back. You've got a problem. You better solve it now. But if you hug somebody every day, how is it that your children don't feel like, oh, mom doesn't love me or dad doesn't love me? When you hug your kids and you mean it, there's vibes that cross over
there
and
is.
they know you care about them. That's unconditional love. And of course, now it's some kids are probably only a mother could love them, I think, but you know, but those little Dickens, but still, if you start holding and loving your kids, I mean, even when I had I told you I've got six kids.
Yeah.
I changed diapers, and I fed them, and they held on my chest. That hurt my beating heart, and they were held securely. I was going to talk about something also too that in terms of increasing awareness, there's an important personality trait called realism. And when you look at people setting goals, if they're unrealistic, it doesn't bode well. Um, you take people who are very realistic, and they're really top performers. You look at everyone. They set a goal. It's only slightly better than their own immediate past performance that they can control, and that's a key. When you set a goal, you've got to make it low positive. So I would tell kids in school, all right, you're on skateboarding mode from the summer. So you only scored a 71 because you didn't even pay attention to study for that first test. You scored a 71. And but you want to score in the 80s. So in the next test, hey, to have an average of 80, what do I have to do in the next test? And the kid would say, well, gee, 71, I got to be eight more, nine more. I got to score 89 so that I can average out to 80.
Yeah.
I said, no, you don't. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. What do you mean wrong? You've got to have high goals to be a high achiever. Yeah, that's a myth. All the top performers I've observed for over 55 years, they set a goal only 1 point higher than their own immediate past performance. This is really important, really key.
So they know they can achieve it.
Well, yeah, there's your
Yeah.
brain has no excuse. No excuse. So
Yeah.
I would tell the kid, so what's 1 point better than 71? Oh, 72. I said, so now when you study with it, like you talked about, the laser beam, the focus and everything,
Yeah.
that's purposeful intent. See, that's the whole idea. That's your purpose. And when you have clarity of that and you know what you got to do, you're going to take in more information and you're going to make it more meaningful and relevant. And you're going to be able to process it, store it in your brain properly, and be able to retrieve it.
Yeah.
So now when you take the test, the next test, because you've been paying attention. You read the book, you paid attention, you took notes, you did a lot of things. Now your next score might be 82.
Mhm. Right.
Okay, so all right, but you really went well over 72, which was your goal, but now it's 82. So kids, what's your next goal? Oh, 83. I said, give me five, man. Give me a high
Yeah.
five.
There you
And
go.
then they get it. And I said, you can't get by on cramming the night before.
No.
You've got to study and whatever it is your problem, you have to solve it. But you've got to put some time into it. You can't just do it in 5 minutes. You've got to
Right.
meditate, think about it, and bring it to the forefront. Instead of it being subconscious, you got to bring it to a conscious mode. And that's how top performers operate.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
Um, I know that you're a motivational speaker, and I love the fact that you explain extrinsic and intrinsic
Yeah.
motivation because they're different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very different. Yeah, like I said earlier, when you give your kid an order, like hey, you're not doing your chores or whatever, or a boss gives the people doing the work an order, um, that immediately becomes extrinsic to them. It's not as meaningful or relevant because
Yeah.
whose needs and values are being met? The person giving the order or the person receiving the order? Well, it's a moot question. It's
Right.
a moot point. It's and so but on the other hand, it's as simple as asking a question or as making a suggestion. Is there a reason why you haven't picked up the dog poop today,
Right.
son? All right,
Right.
now, then you have to shut up and listen. The
Mhm.
first one to speak is going to lose. I told the same thing to my teachers. When you have maybe three simple rules, and the kids da 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 da, and the teacher goes da 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 da, the teacher, you're going to lose. The kid's going to win the argument.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing in life. I mean, so when you ask questions, that wheels between their ears have to work and they have to
Yeah.
come up with an answer. But then you have to be patient and then sit back and put your arms like this and just wait. If they try if they try to leap, excuse me, simple, simple, simple. Excuse me, and then you wait. And then you block them. No, you can't get out it. No, I want to hear your
I want
answer.
an answer. Yeah.
So, but then the same thing when you deal in a business,
Yeah.
people have a way of doing things. And I don't care if the goal is to get in the living room. I don't care if you go through an outside window in the backyard. I don't care. If your goal is to get to the living room, why would I care? Why does it have to be my process? You can figure out your own. If you have a simpler way to do the job, let them do the job that way. Provided they don't, nobody gets killed or loses a finger or something like that. And so the whole idea though is realism, and that's so important today. I think the people who are having a struggle, they blame everybody else but themselves. They don't take personal accountability. One of the things I taught my kids, all my kids, but was personal accountability. If you
Yes.
screw up the test because you didn't study, you don't blame the teacher. You blame yourself. Or
Right.
if you're on an athletic team, all you can do is the best you can do. And if the team loses, well, okay, you did the best you could. But you
Right.
don't go blaming your coach and blaming everybody else. You don't do that.
Right.
We seems to me we have in a political system, we have a lot of people want to blame other people, and it's on both sides for their poor results. And but I'm a results-driven guy too. So and that's part of behavioral stuff that I think about. I get the big picture.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we got some. That's the increased awareness part of it. Would you like to know the second secret
Oh,
skill?
yes,
All right.
please.
Okay. All right. You have to enhance self-evaluation. All right. This is where personal accountability comes in. Now, having been a championship world record holder in swimming, I learned this in college a long time ago. Was there is a pre-performance evaluation. Now I amass all the knowledge and skills I have into this one given moment in time, this one performance. And that's pre-performance evaluation. I evaluate everything that I've learned in the past to apply to this given moment in time, whether I'm writing a book, a theme, or working on the job. I've got to do that. And then, of course, just like when you play golf, if you have a bad shot, you can't put the clubs in the bag, say, I'll come back tomorrow and finish the round. Or if it's a part of the test that you're a blank and all of a sudden you're just crazy, you can't answer it. Well, you keep moving and then you come back to it later. But that's during performance evaluation. And of course, you know that when people screw up an interview, oh, I wish I'd have said that in the interview. Well, you didn't do the pre part. You didn't know what to do during during part when you were asked a question that you couldn't answer. But 95% of the time, people are great at the post-performance evaluation, but you didn't do the pre or the during. So you've got to learn all three. So I have
Yeah.
three chapters in my book on that. But and I would ask kids, I said, well, who knows you better than you? Well, they would struggle with that. I said, wait a minute, uh, your mom? Oh yeah, okay, yeah. My mother, yeah, sure. And so when you think about it, if you have a good realistic personality and you're not being told that you're greater than you really are, that sort of thing by moms and doing that sometimes. Even though I said moms, you have that influence, but be realistic with your kid. I mean, if they're not capable and ready yet,
Yeah.
um, you've got to bring them along.
Mhm.
I mean, that's one of the problems now that kids don't know what they want to do for a life career, and but moms can be influencers like that. And but instead of them letting them just play PlayStation all day long or just stay in the house or just glued to their
Right.
technology, get
Right.
them out engaged, get them into sports or activities, the band, music, arts, whatever.
Mhm.
Become artists. I mean, be creative, and that's what we're talking about, creativity as well. It's a really
Right.
important part of their life. So enhance self-evaluation. It's really key. Now, the problem is top performers to the person tend to be tough on themselves. In
Sure.
sports psychology, we have this phrase, be your own best friend.
Mhm.
Yes, but when you set a low positive goal, think about it. You're going to walk around with your head high because, hey, success does breed success.
Sure it
And
does.
and you're happy. But when you keep putting a high goal at yourself and it's unrealistic, and then you walk, I didn't get my goal, and you're walking around down in the dumps and everything, that's not a good way to live your life.
Right.
So that's where the triad performance improvement system comes in and amasses all this stuff. Because each one of these skills, you learn them independently, but you will apply them interdependently. It's like watching, well, the light bulb goes on with one of them, and then it jostles the other two. Think of three spheres all interconnected.
Mhm.
And when it wakes up the other one, it wakes up and it jumps into the other one and the other one. Well, guess how long that goes on for? So when you learn the triad, it goes on for the rest of your life. And that's where you become a top performer. And it's within all of us to do that if you learn these three secret skills. All right. So would you like to know the third one?
Oh, yes, please. I would love to
All
know the third one.
right. All right. Well, maybe we save the best for last.
Of
Um,
course.
all right. Again, this came to me when I wrote the triad at 3:30 in the morning.
Uh-huh.
I did it basically in my bathroom with a lap board, and I had
Oh,
a
yeah.
notepad, and I had to sit quietly, kept my mind open, like we talked about earlier, keeping an
Yes.
open mind. And this time, it took probably maybe 6 or 7 minutes, and all of a sudden it came to my brain, um, connect reward with reinforcement. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, well, that sounds that doesn't sound like a pep talk or anything like that. And none
Mhm.
of these three things sound like a pep talk
Right.
because those are motivational things, and I'm a transformational guy. I like to see it, make it permanent. So I started thinking about that, and what makes you want to keep doing the same job? Is it just for the paycheck, or is there more involved with your life and your career? And or again, it goes back to your purpose and what's your intent.
Yes.
Um, do you intend to become educated? I would tell teenagers, it's your job to become educated. I don't care if it's fun all the time. Hey, your mother and father, your mom and I are, we're working sometimes two jobs to put a roof over your head, give you what you need. And so your job is to become educated. That's your job. And so it's not a hard thing, but some kids don't get that. And then, of course, today, if you ask a kid to mow the lawn, oh gosh, that's like, it's crazy. You can't do that. Oh, no, that's not my pay grade or whatever. And they will put up all kinds of excuses to not do it. And yet, if they mow the lawn, they see what a good job they do. And well, in fact, let's use another example. A kid comes home from the seventh grade and gee, how do you like my new project that I did for the seventh grade? This whole thing that takes like 6 weeks to get it done. Some parents actually do it for them, which is wrong, the
Yeah.
helicopter parent. But when they do it, then the kid wants to have the approval from the parents. Hey, look, I got an A on my report card, or I got an
Right.
A on this project, or whatever. And a lot of parents say, "Wow, that's really great." They want to pat them on the back and do all these things. And I suggest to parents that, wow, that's really interesting. What did you have to do to get that? Ask them a question. Now the wheels have to work between their ears, and they have to think, well, wait a minute. In essence, here's what the paradigm shift is. They had a goal. Well, who did the work? Well, I did.
Mhm.
I said, well, then who gets all the reward?
Yeah,
And they have to think about it. Because parents, you don't need the reward. Give it all to your kids.
yeah,
I'm not so good in algebra, but when the triplets were going through high school, my wife's pretty good in algebra. She would help them with algebra. When they came back with a good test score, she gave all the credit to them. We
sure.
didn't need it. And yet parents want to take it all in, like they want to live their life vicariously through their kids. No, don't do that. I don't want any one of my kids to be like me. I want them to be individuals. And that's
Right,
what God gave us this purpose in life, that each one's individual and you're creative and you can do all these things. And the
right.
same thing for your audience. If you do these three things where you increase awareness, you enhance self-evaluation, and you connect reward with reinforcement, I will guarantee you that for maybe 90, 95% of the time, you're going to do very well. One of the things that I brought into this whole idea was B.F. Skinner's black box. There's now I'm not a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm a behaviorist.
Mhm.
But what B.F. Skinner does, he says, here's this black box. In other words, it's your brain. It's between your ears. Uh, I can give you an input cue, but if I don't get the right output cue and a feedback loop coming back into the input side of it, um, I've got to change the input cue until I get you to think about doing the right output.
Mm,
That's basic teaching 101.
mhm.
Sometimes teachers don't adjust that for the age level of the child that they're teaching, like if it's an elementary school or a high school kid.
Sure. Big difference.
And one of the whole process here is that the person that makes the information meaningful and relevant is the person that's receiving the message. And I think we covered that. When you bark orders at somebody, hey, it's extrinsic to them. It doesn't mean as much. But when you ask a suggestion or make a suggestion or you ask a question, um, it becomes intrinsic to the person receiving the message. And they have to give you an answer. I mean, something between their ears has to work, the wheels, something. And then, of course, that brings in who's the boss leader or the lead manager, sort of thing. And I see that happening in business all the time where you've got managers that it's my way or the highway. And it's men and women that are management.
And don't you think you always get a better end result when you engage the other person in the conversation and
Yeah.
when you listen to them? Because if they're doing the job, they know all the little idiosyncrasies
Hmm.
that need to be considered that someone managing may not really know.
Right.
So ask their input, and then they feel like they've been heard and they're appreciated. And that would be a motivator, I would think.
Oh, it's huge. That's huge. You just hit the nail on the head right there.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's tough because if you're really a true leader, in the old school days, it was, I don't want to know anything about your personal life because if I get to know you and I like you and I still have to fire you, I don't want to feel bad because I have to fire you. Well, that's still not the right answer. Uh, you, all motivation is based about a quality of life. Now,
yeah,
obviously, your quality of life, my quality of life, everyone in your audience is a different quality of
right.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And but a lot of that focuses on satisfaction of one's personal needs and values.
Yeah,
So if you're the parent, you're not instilling the right values in your kids. That includes consequences from time to time when they don't behave properly. Um, yeah, I mean, to give you another example of that value system. My mother was the spiritual leader of our family. Um, my dad, I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, where Northwestern is, and my dad grew up in Chicago. So my dad was a little bit rough around the edges, right? If you ever saw the movie Christmas Story, where the boy, he says the F-bomb because the lug nuts go flying and he gets his mouth with soap in it and everything. Well, before I was 10, somebody would cut us off on the highways around Chicago when I was a kid. And my
yeah,
dad would, you son of a, you,
yeah, yeah.
and
You go at it.
yeah, and I knew every cuss word before I was 10. So, but mom was more refined.
Yeah,
And so, mom just, she knew me. And well, and I tell you, for the moms that are out there, you're a better influencer than you realize that your kids, especially your high school teenagers, having been a school superintendent, I don't know about you, but I personally didn't know what I was going to do when I was a senior in high school. And yet you want to send them off to a 4-year school and they don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
They're going to be a party school and they're not going to be focused.
Right.
Better to go
Right.
to a trade school or at least go to a community college for 2 years and then get a little more maturity, know what you want to do with your life and your future.
Hmm.
But parents just think, oh my God, if you don't go to a 4-year school, your kid's going to be a moron. That's not true. That's not true.
Not
I've
at all.
advocated, I've advocated for trade schools, and now all my 6 kids have college degrees and successful careers. But it was a career, not just a job that they were looking for. But here's the problem: your top performer, they all take what they do for granted. Now, I know you're a top performer. I'm a top performer. I assume there's people in your audience are top performers. Maybe not realize it, but they are. And a true top performer could be the best teller at your local branch bank. It
Oh
could be
yeah.
the best custodian at your kid's elementary school. What a top performer is not, it's a know-it-all. If you think you know it all, I mean, you take knowledgeable people, they don't know it all, and they keep learning. They're lifelong learners.
Yes.
Those are the people you want to hang with.
Yeah.
So, so let's get the application down here now. Okay, we've covered these things, and your top performer tends to not do enough of the third. I know that people out there in your audience have probably done these two things naturally. Well, I do that all the time. They've increased awareness, they bring in more information, they've enhanced self-evaluation. In fact, top performers are tough on themselves. We have a thing in sports psychology, it's called be your own best friend.
Hmm.
Because when you set goals that are unrealistic and they're really way out of line, um, you don't achieve them very frequently, and then you're down on yourself. Oh man, I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at that, and you're negative. Whereas if you have a low positive goal, only slightly better than your own immediate past performance again, then you
Hmm.
you could easily get it. Your brain has no excuse.
Yeah.
And that's a really
Yeah.
important, powerful thing. And I learned from testing our 72 men's Olympic swimming team. I tried to manipulate these guys to set higher goals. No, they didn't care. They didn't care what anybody else did. They only did what they could control and what they've done.
Yes.
And so it's a powerful lesson to set low positive goals, only slightly better than your own immediate past performance. So if we talked about that earlier, that's great. Let's just reinforce that idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
And don't you think that having that self-awareness is also part of having a sense of self-responsibility? And
accountability.
I know I teach private piano lessons still to this day, and I love it. But some of the students don't want to take the responsibility for their own preparation. They will
Yeah.
come in and say, oh, I didn't have a chance to practice because mom made me do this, and then we had to go here. And I said, oh, okay, well, what TV show did you watch this week? And did you play a video game? And oh, yeah, they tell me all. I said, well, you made a choice.
Hmm.
You chose those things that were recreational. And while they were fun in the moment, they didn't further your goal. So you
Right.
have to decide, am I going to empower myself by choosing something that is preparation for an end goal? Or am I going to just check out mentally and be entertained? Right.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
good news to that is when you accept personal responsibility, you then empower yourself to have control over the outcome.
Exactly. You make the right choices. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Because you do have control over the choices that you make. Every day you make a bazillion choices, right?
Hmm.
But most people do them in a reactionary mode instead of in that pause of mindfulness where they actually consciously make a choice.
Yeah, I'd see it because, I've got a whole chapter in my book called How to Increase Intelligence. And part of it is the intelligent person has the ability to project down the road based on their past
Yes,
experience. Now, your young people don't have enough experience yet to project as well down the road. That's where parents come in. That's where moms come in
right.
because, like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do for my career. And mom said, well, you're pretty good at a lot of sports. Why don't you become a PE teacher? All right, okay, well. So then I became a health ed and a PE teacher because I wanted to coach swimming, and I coached all Americans and done that too. So, um, but the idea here is that moms, I got to tell you, the moms are really important to these kids. Now, um, one thing that I've also advocated with my 6 kids was, well, and now that I'm on my third marriage, for 40 years,
Yeah.
is hug your kids because, and hug your spouse, hug your partner. I found that when you're hugging something, and it's like you're hugging a telephone pole, and you're not getting any vibes back. There's no energy there. There's no electricity. You've got a problem. Don't wait till the sun sets. The old phrase,
Right,
don't do that.
right.
That's too long. But on the other hand, if you're hugging somebody every day, hug your spouse every day and tell them how much you appreciate them, how much you love them. Same thing for your kids. Put your arm around them, give them a hug, whether they want it or not, and keep doing that. You know,
Yeah, just don't do it in front of their friends.
that's true.
Mom!
Yeah. Come on, mom. Yeah, and mom, I had a colic, and mom would go like this and want to, part my hair or licking her, one of those crazy things. No, mom, hey, come on. But uh, but no, it's really important, I think, for people to engage people that way. And it's the same thing when a leader talks to the people that are doing the work.
Mhm,
Hey, Fred, how are your kids doing on there? How's your kid? He's on the football team, right? How's he doing? Or
mhm.
Sarah, how's your daughter doing on the swimming team?
Sure.
Asking about their personal lives because, like I said, all motivation is centered around a quality of life, and it's different for every individual. But underneath that is one's idea of satisfying personal needs and values. And of
Mhm.
course, goals fit into that. But when you do that, you're going to have a powerful company. You're going to have people who really are engaged. They want to do well because it's not just for the company. They can feel the success that they're achieving. And you're right about evaluation now because the person doing the job probably has a different way of doing it instead
Yeah.
of the leader saying my way or the highway. And we should listen to them. I know when I had to evaluate teachers when I was well, I had to be a principal first before I became a superintendent. And you always ask the person you're evaluating, give me your evaluation. Here's the evaluation form, and they evaluate. Never have I found anybody wants to evaluate them as really great. Oh man, I'm really, yeah,
Right.
I'm perfect. I'm perfect. You know, if anything, they're tough on themselves
Yeah,
and they'll
that's
rate themselves very hard. But again, you never want to start the evaluation conversation out with, wow, Fred, you're just terrible in this. You're rotten in this. You can't do that, right? No, you never start the conversation out that,
true.
not if you want to get them on your side.
Yeah.
But you always talk about the good things they're doing. Hey, I like this. And then you agree with what they've evaluated, or maybe even say, look, you evaluated yourself too low. You're really better at this than what you're saying. And they want to hear that because then you're engaging them, you care about them. Caring is
Right.
important. And so from that, then you said, well, now here's a couple of things I think we could work on together to improve and it'd be a little bit better for the whole company and the organization or
Sure.
just helping yourself.
Right.
But here are the applications. This is really important now. You've got the three secret skills now. You've increased awareness, you enhance self-evaluation, and you connect reward with reinforcement. And you want to shorten your learning curve. So if you're an athlete and you want to be a golfer, you don't watch duffers. You watch the pro golfer, and
Right.
that's how they do the grip, the stance, and that's how they do things, right? And so you look at the top performer and you model them. All
Yes.
right. But then when you do that, you shorten your learning curve. And here's how the application works. I don't know what falls out of what I call the big four. There's jobs. Well, that's pretty much, well, you're sitting in a cubicle or you're on an assembly line or, welding something or I don't know, building something. That's a job. You usually get paid for it. And
Sure.
then there's tasks like I would ask some kids, I said, well, do you have a maid? "Oh, no. I said, well, who's doing your laundry, man? Come on. Hey, who's doing those dishes in the sink? And who brings the groceries and takes them up two flights of stairs, puts them away? Those are tasks. They're not fun. Or who cleans out your gutters, in the fall?
Yeah.
All right. Then there are skills. Now, I happen to be pretty good and skilled in quite a few things, which everybody could be if they just decided to choose to be
You
better
have
at
to choose
something.
it. Yes.
Yeah, there's an innate drive in us to be improving. It's even a robin builds a better nest the next year.
Mhm.
It's a natural thing that you want to tap into. Um, so there's skills, and you have to name them. Maybe you're an artist, you're a musician like you are,
Yeah.
you're talented in the arts and music and things like that. So now there's also then relationships. That's the fourth one. Now people still have a mom and dad. Maybe their grandparents are still alive, aunts and uncles. And I tell people, I don't care what religion you are, hopefully there's a higher power in your life. And that's the most important one, I think. I
Uh-huh.
don't spend enough time in that relationship, and I should count my blessings, that sort of thing. But I've been very happy to have learned what I have and been blessed that way in so many ways. Um, so you've got jobs, tasks, skills, and relationships. Those are the big four that you get to apply what these three secret skills do for you.
Mhm.
And then, of course, because you've got that awareness module in, you've got to be aware of subtle improvements, and just be aware of them. And when all of a sudden you see that, hey, I'm able to talk to my uncle a little better now, or I'm able to communicate with my mom or my dad better,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
or I'm able to communicate with my kid who's been kind of a jerk lately, you know. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, uh, that's all the part of it, and that's why I'm so enthused about helping to help your audience to learn how to do these applications, and it's been wonderful. I just love it. Is there anything more I could add to these your
Well,
audience?
I just love the fact that you have brought an understanding and an experience to a topic that is so empowering because let's face it, not everybody has that life experience of working with people who are successful, working with elite
Yeah,
athletes, having been in a leadership position in the schools as superintendent. I mean, you have such a variety of wealth of different life experiences that you can bring to this, and an understanding too that we're not just here to do a task, and we're spirits and we're learning and we're growing.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that spiritual connection is part of that quality of life.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think without that, and
Hmm.
without that thirst for knowledge and growth and trying new things and adventure, and that's why we travel, right? That's why we take a course in watercolor painting. That's why, I mean,
Hmm.
whatever, right? That's why we pursue our passions.
Yeah, and I like what your podcast is all about is creativity with purpose. When you think about it, if you're not aware, you're not clear in your purpose, you're not going anywhere. It's like
Right.
trying to, you got to have a roadmap. You have to have some kind of a
You do.
guide to get you where you want to go. But that starts with a goal. But now, again, you want to keep your goals realistic.
Yeah.
You don't be so unrealistic that it's just
Right.
impossible to do. I mean, for example, like I may have mentioned that if you're 5'9", you're not going to be playing center in the NBA, or if you're only 125 pounds, like when I graduated from high school, you're not going to be a middle linebacker in the NFL, you know.
Right.
So you got
So
to be,
realism is a good
yeah.
thing.
Well, and the funny part of this is, I love to watch The Voice. I love to see good talent
Sure.
portrayed on The Voice. And then I see some things when America's Got Talent was not The Voice, it was that.
Huh.
And there are some moms that say, "Oh, their kid, oh, you sing so beautifully." And this kid is tone deaf. Is tone deaf, can't hold a note, and yet mom has said, "Oh, you're so good at this."
Yes.
No, when I
Yes.
had my first meeting as a superintendent with my teachers, I said, "I'm going to tell you something. As a behaviorist, I do not believe in self-esteem psychology
Oh,
because when you tell it, how the kids in second grade they do the handwriting exercises with the lines and everything, and they start drawing. Well, I don't know if they're even doing cursive anymore. I think they're coming back to it,
I hope
which is
so.
I hope so too. It's
Yeah.
crazy if you can't read cursive. I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
So so here's the teacher telling Tommy in the second grade, "Oh, Tommy, you're doing so good." And Tommy's looking at her like, "Hey, I haven't done anything." He knows.
And they
So
know.
they know, yeah, you can't lie to it. And the kid thinks, "You're lying to me. You know what? You're telling me no, I haven't done squat and I know it." And
Yeah.
they won't believe you anything you tell them. And the same thing, it's like Peter and the Wolf type thing where you lie about it and then you keep
Yeah.
lying about it, and then people see through that, and unfortunately we're seeing that in some of the political arenas that we see today, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but people have to see through that sort of thing, and but it's all about being honest with yourself, and but again,
Exactly. I was just going to say, the word that comes to mind is authenticity.
yes, 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 mm-hmm,
And that is in dealing with yourself and in your interpersonal relationships
yeah,
and how you present to the world, right?
yeah,
Because we're not following our passion and we're not true to our authentic self. What
yeah,
is it that we're presenting to the world,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And that's a cornerstone for understanding what your purpose is and what your goals want. Because if you're not clear on what goals you want, you're
yeah,
the space cadet walking
yeah,
around,
yeah,
right?
right.
We've all
Well,
met them.
As a high school kid, my dad gave me some sage advice. He
Uh-huh.
could see I was in that state where I have to go on to school, and because back in my both parents didn't they grew up in the Depression. They couldn't go to college. I mean, they were smart enough to do it, but they couldn't afford it, and at all.
Sure.
I mean, and my dad said to me, when you have a conversation with people, don't talk up to them and don't talk down to them because either way, they're going to know the difference.
Sure.
Just be yourself. And then
Right.
when I think about it from a spiritual point of view, that all of us are gifted in certain ways. And of course, as a high school kid, you got to find out what your gifts are.
Right.
But obviously, like I said, when I was a runt graduating from high school, I wasn't going to be, doing basketball or football. So I chose swimming because then I had a big growth spurt 10 months after I graduated. I grew 5.5 inches and gained
Oh
32
my
pounds.
gosh.
Yeah, I never got to go to a state meet or big meet. And then I took third in the country my freshman year.
Oh
And
my
just,
goodness.
yeah, just had a meteoric rise and beat guys that were in college champions and stuff.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I never looked back. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it happens, but you have to be focused. Again, I went to Indiana University because this college coach was going to teach me how to be a good coach. And it turned out then he became our 1964 and our 1976 U.S. men's Olympic head coach. So I
Wow.
learned all the physics principles from him. And then when I got my PhD, it was more or less psychology of learning principles that so I can teach someone to swim in about half the time that other people do. But,
Absolutely.
and I love doing it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's taken a lot of years. For example, because I was a breaststroker and I've got world records in that. And I see even some of these Olympic guys that are swim breaststroke, like Hansen and from a couple others, and they're describing how to do breaststroke, and it's all wrong because they're not educators. And
Oh, right.
now,
Their ability to
yeah,
express. Yeah.
yeah,
It's not good.
they don't know how to teach it. They know what they're doing, but they can't teach it. Um,
That's so true. There's a big difference between having facility
yeah,
and having the ability to express that.
yeah, and that as a music teacher yourself, although you're
Yes.
skilled at playing and doing stuff as well. And but now to give you an example, breaststroke's kind of a complex stroke.
Yeah.
And it took me 35 years to perfect how to teach that in 1 hour because I use patterns and sequences in the right order that other instructors don't know how to do.
Sure.
And that's how the brain learns and
Right.
remembers things.
Right.
And of course, like I said, Einstein was so brilliant because he did multisensory learning.
Yeah.
He didn't really speak till he was 6 years old, but he's amassing all this knowledge he was bringing in, and that's why I call him increasing awareness.
Yeah.
And but he made these associational neurons that were just fantastic. He would remember it, but I couldn't remember what it looked like. He would remember what it might have smelled like, and then it would
Yes.
trigger what it would look like.
Yes.
That's the associational neurons that he had,
Yeah.
and that's part of the intelligence and being able to project down the road and seeing what your future could be. And it's the same thing for kids. And that's where, again, I keep coming back to moms. You're a great influencer, but if your kid's more worried about if five friends are going to like them on TikTok, that's the wrong value system. You want to get kids to think about their future. And that doesn't mean you become a helicopter parent, you stand over them,
Mhm.
but you show them the way that they can learn it. This is the best way, the triad performance improvement system. It teaches them what we've been talking about, learning personal accountability. All my
Yes.
6 kids, that was a major, major topic for me is when if you screw up a test because you didn't study, you don't blame the teacher
Right. Exactly.
and
You
or
put
your
the
teammates.
responsibility where it belongs. And
Yeah,
the lovely thing about that is then for the next time, you have control over it. You
yeah,
can choose to reverse that cycle. You can
yeah,
choose to excel
yeah.
because if you were dependent on someone else to do it for you, you're at their mercy. But this way, you're
Right.
empowered.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think that's been one of the problems. I think some parents have been trying to do too much for their kids, and you've got to let them make some mistakes. I mean, yeah, you don't want them to fall off a cliff or anything like
Right,
that,
right,
or
right.
drive texting and driving. I mean, back in my era with my kids, it was drinking and driving, but now it's texting and driving. And because that prefrontal cortex that decides right in front of your brain, the frontal lobe that does your thinking, it's not fully developed till age 23 to 25.
Yeah,
And so kids are going to make mistakes.
sure.
But again, as a parent, you can forewarn them about some things. You don't wait till their senior year and say, "Well, you should have known better."
Mhm.
No,
They have
my
no way of knowing. Yeah.
I don't. Did I tell you the story? I can't remember if I said this earlier, but when the triplets, because my first marriage, the triplets came to move in with us their freshman year in high school. And
Oh,
before they put their foot into the first classroom, I said to them, guys, of course, they're boys. I could talk to them a little more frank, but
yeah,
what I
yeah,
can say to your audience. But I said, in so many words, don't screw this up.
yeah.
I said, if I'm called in the dean's office or you're flunking, you're doing poor grades and stuff, we're going to have a discussion.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it's not going to be pretty.
yeah,
And now I said, you've got 4 years to make something yourself. And if you want me to help you, I will help you. But if you're messing it up, I'm not going to invest any more money in you on that sort of thing. You're 18 years old, you're emancipated. I don't owe you a dime.
yeah,
Now, if you can, and then, well, the tagline was, we taught them how to go camping, which the parents should be like Mama Bear, Papa Bear. You should teach your kids how to at least do their laundry and
yeah.
do dishes and cook once a few things like French toast or eggs and stuff.
Something, yeah,
I mean, yeah, at least so they can be self-reliant.
right.
And so I, I ended it. I said to the kids, I said, look, you know how to build fires and all that stuff. I said, but guess what? When you turn 18, you're not living with me. You got it? I said, and furthermore, I'm not letting you live in the tent in the backyard with the squirrels because you're not using our washing machine, you're not using our refrigerator, you're not taking showers, you're not using our facilities, period. If you can talk your mother into living with her, that's fine. I don't care. You're just not living with me. But see, that's tough love. But see, I set the tone early. I didn't wait till their senior year to spring it on them. Well, you should have known better. No,
Mhm.
don't assume. Part of that other story is if you ever saw the movie The Bad News Bears with Malden,
Yeah,
yeah. He draws on the blackboard, assume, and then he draws a line after ass,
right,
assume,
right. ASS,
to make
yeah,
an ass out of you and me. You know,
right, exactly.
and it goes back to a value system again too. I mean, like you said, personal accountability. That's the most important thing you can teach your children, and that's a value system. I mean, one of the now it's a spiritual value. Maybe I was honored, or I was told by my parents, and that was part of my life. You honor your mother and father, and you respect your elders. And
Mhm.
I've had some discussions with some of my grandchildren that didn't quite respect grandpa. Well, they learned respect rather quickly. You know, they got a couple spankings on their jeans, and it didn't hurt them anything. Maybe
Sure.
tanned on them a little bit, but it sent them the message: you don't screw around with grandpa. If grandpa tells you something, it's for your own good.
Uh-huh.
And but tough love is been kind of been thrown to the wayside now. I think too many parents they abdicate their roles, which they are important to do.
Yeah.
The school should teach you discipline, not me. Well, look what's happening. These young people that are rioting and stuff, they're not old people out there in the streets. They're these young people that I would probably say 99.9% have never been given a consequence when they were growing up. They got away with it and they're doing it over and over again, and it gets reinforced.
Yeah.
So, but if you reinforce the right values, your kids will turn out pretty well.
Yeah. I love it.
Um, yeah. So, but that's where the triad performance improvement system comes in. And every one of your people in your audience has the ability to become a top performer if they aren't already. But I
Yes.
guarantee you that if they are, that you're just not doing enough of the third one. You've got to pat yourself on the back. Connect, reward with reinforcement. It's what drives you to do a little bit better tomorrow than you did today. That's all
And
you can do.
I always wake up in the morning and I can't wait to pop out of bed
Yeah.
and go
Yeah.
outside on my deck, and I like to film the sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we have a glorious amount of clouds and that play of light and we get the colors, oh, it's just such a party. I absolutely love it. And then after I've
They're
had
energized.
that
Yeah.
beautiful commune with nature in the morning, right? I can't wait to get down to the piano and continue that composition or record the piece I composed yesterday
Yeah.
or write another chapter in the romance novel I'm working on.
Oh, ooh, a
Oh,
little risque
spoiler
there.
alert.
Yeah.
And I've already written the theme song for the movie.
Yeah, really.
So the point is, I'm passionate and energized to get to it
Yeah. It's
as
your
soon as I
creativity.
get up in the morning because I'm creatively inspired
Yeah.
and I'm following a passion, and I'm thankful and blessed and grateful every morning when I get up for another opportunity to get at it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that kind of internal drive,
Yeah.
There's a trouble. There's a problem. You should find something that excites you that way.
Yeah. Well, and the way to do that is to find things and set a low positive goal where you continually reward yourself. See, remember I
Yeah,
said connect reward with reinforcement? How do you expect to keep going at something and drive yourself to get better at something if you never set a goal and you never try to see your improvement? If you're not
exactly.
aware of your improvement, then you're going to take what you do for granted. And that's unfortunate what a lot of top performers do. They take what they do for granted. And you just must not do that.
Yeah.
Just be pat yourself. Now, of course, like I said, if you brag about yourself, there are some people that don't want to work as hard as
Well,
you
there's a
have to get
difference
there.
between that ingenuousness and
Yeah,
true gratitude,
yeah, right.
right? Because I mean, I am so grateful for the music that flows through me.
Yeah,
It's fabulous. I channel music. I hear it. I sit at the piano and I start to hear the notes and I just write them down. It just
yeah,
comes through. I just hear it. And what a blessing. What a fabulous place to be, right? And
yeah,
it's joy. And it's I find that to be a true spiritual and emotional joy.
yeah,
And you can express your creative flow. That's fabulous. And no matter what you do,
yeah.
right?
Oh, and you don't have to be like a just one single-minded purpose. A lot of creative people do a lot of good things. Now,
Oh yeah.
said that when you maybe I have to send you some lyrics for some songs that I've written, but I don't
There
know
you
how to
go.
put the melody and all the other stuff and do all the
Oh
put
yeah.
cymbals in here or the piano here. I don't know how to do all that, but maybe I'll just see what you play with it and see what you do
Oh,
with
you
it.
should. You should.
Yeah, and see what happens. But
Absolutely.
yeah, well, I tell you, it's been wonderful. I mean, because you've got a very creative audience, I would hope, and I hope we've given them some things to think about. But again, I would stress doing the third one enough. Now, as I tell people, there's no law that says you can't have a personal conversation between your ears. Just
Yeah.
don't do it in traffic on the way home from work. Okay, just focus on that. But occasionally meditate a little bit. Say, "Wow, I helped that guy," or "I made that sales," even though I told him what to do, even though it wasn't a sale. I didn't make a profit from it, but I helped somebody.
Yeah.
And it's the old Confucius thing. If you can't help somebody, certainly don't hurt them.
Right.
And we've seen a whole group of people that they don't believe the way you want them to believe, or they get you to believe the way they want you to believe. They want to hurt you. They want to harm you. They
Yeah.
don't want to just yell at you. They want to harm you.
Yeah.
And I'm not into that
No,
at
no.
all. But I'm
I
helping
think the
people.
whole world will function better when we understand that the natural world should be based on cooperation and abundance.
Yeah, yeah, helping each other. Yeah,
Right.
to achieve.
Exactly.
It's what my wife and I've done. We've helped each other grow in our
Exactly.
relationship and become
Yeah.
better people.
Yeah.
Um, and so hopefully the people have good relationships that are out there, or hopefully they can mend some relationships with their kids if the kids are being a jerk. But because I know we all have kids, and it's tough at times, but it can be very rewarding at the same time to
Certainly
see
can.
your kids do well.
Well, you
So
know what? This is a perfect place to end. And I thank you so much.
yeah,
It's been
thanks.
fun. Thank you. I would
Yeah.
love to have you back sometime. I think we could just sit here and chit chat forever.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah. Well,
A
I
lot
hope
of,
I didn't.
lot of good insights.
I'd like to eloquate or make my words more eloquent. And so if I don't, because I know sometimes I get to talking so fast, I slur my words and I don't speak so clearly. But I hope people got the gist of what we had to talk about today.
Absolutely. I'm sure
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Well, you
Been
have
wonderful.
a beautiful, blessed day, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.